Here.
Keith.
Yeah.
Steinberg.
Excused, sorry.
Present.
Wickersham.
Here. We have a quorum. Please stand for the pledge of allegiance.
Present.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
I thought she called them all based on the phone. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. First on the agenda, we have citizen comments. At this point, any citizen can come and address the council and myself about anything that is not on the agenda. Any citizen comments, then? Come on.
Denise McGill, 2454 Northeast 15th Avenue, Payette. Just two quick things. Even in the water again.
I think we had a hydrant fail. I don't have my water guy here. There was a hydrant that failed on Driftwood, and they're working on fixing it.
Thank you. That was her street. Of course, it was her street. The other thing is Saturday, having at the senior center, the mayor and Ray are both agreed to come and address our Republican women's group. Everyone is invited. Yeah, snacks, and it'll be a short presentation from both mayor at 10:15 to 10:30, and then Ray will be 10:30 to 10:45. All good? Come and join us. Okay, thank you.
Any other citizens comments? All right. No more. Next, approval of minutes.
I make the motion that the minutes be approved.
Mayor, can we do those in two sections just because of the issue we had with the 818? Approve it separately.
Do I have a second for the motion? I don't have a second on the motion.
So, Ray, you want each one of them individually then? So, I make the motion that we accept the corrected minutes from August 18th.
Second.
I have a first and a second to approve the corrected minutes of 8/18/2025 public hearing regular meeting minutes. Any further discussion?
Mr. Mayor, I just have a couple things. There's still a lot of sentences in there that do not make any sense. So I'm just concerned about that. You have levy weight, when it should be levy rate. And then sentences do not make sense. There's a motion on the floor. So I'm still concerned about them. Of going out and being a permanent record.
I agree they're greatly improved, but I agree with Bobby, they're still considering the criticality of that group of minutes because of the debate on the budget. There are some sentences and stuff that really don't make any sense, but it's way better than it was, I'll give them that.
Do you guys want to make the corrections before voted, or?
Well, my preference is I feel that there's too many in there to go with them. I can give them a copy of what I see. It's not correct. I mean, they can still make their own judgment of what they want done. But I know one got changed, but I stated it's 91,985,000. So it got
What page is that?
page 22. So it was changed from what was before and not correct.
What's it supposed to be?
I'd have to honestly look to see what we were talking about at that point.
91 million, so that's a new budget, Bobby, you need that.
It's the dollar amount on that one because we don't have a $91 million budget. Yeah.
All right, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay, motion fails. So we will give back staff for another 2 weeks and have them continue to clean them up. Next, 9/2/25, regular meeting minutes.
Mr. Mayor, I move we approve the regular meeting minutes for 9/2/25.
I'll second.
And first and second to approve the regular meeting minutes of 9/2/25. Any further discussion?
I just have two things. It's Donna Peterson on page 37, not Donna Fraser, with the chamber. And then, I'm not positive, but did Gary Youngberg, did he say that the land is useless to the airport?
Yes.
Okay, that was, okay, so Donna Peterson's my only correction.
I have a correction because it says after a unanimous vote, the motion failed on the approval of minutes, and I voted to approve them. So it wasn't unanimous.
Just a comment, some of these were, the other ones were broke out in detail, some of these were kind of thrown all together in a pot, but I'm happy with them, so I'll accept them.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, approval of payables.
Mr. Mayor, so now I gotta get to the payables. Like the 2 minutes. I make the motion that we approve bills payables in the amount of $267,231.88.
First and second to approve bills and payables in the amount of $267,231.88. Any further discussion?
It has Carissa McComb, Lucy Pipes Cleaning for 2 August cleanings for the same amount for the library. So I was just wondering if that was correct?
It's been corrected. It was for July and August.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion? Clerk, please call the roll.
Patrick,
Yes.
Steinecker.
Yes.
Wickersham.
Yes.
Black,
Yes.
Franklin.
Yes.
Motion carries. Agenda item, first on the agenda today, we have a presentation from Tony Edmondson, the chair of the Weezer City and Washington County Certified Local Government Commissions regarding operation and benefit of being a certified local government. Tony, come on up.
Yes, my name is Tony Edmondson. I'm a Weezer resident of 44 years, and thank you for the opportunity to speak about historic preservation. I have to say, every time I come into town on 201 for the last 40 plus years, there's 2 things that always come to mind, and it's kind of what was Payette's loss and Weezer's gain. I hate to tell you that, but the first thing is I look over and see where your Union Pacific Depot used to be, and reflect on the fact that I remember that night 40 years ago, actually, 1985, when I got a call from Barbara Wilson, our dear Barbara Wilson, saying, you know, Union Pacific just took the wrecking ball to our depot and they're headed your way. And had it not been for that call, probably we wouldn't have a depot either. So I'm always grateful for her friendship, but also for what she did for our community. And then the other thing, when I look the other direction, is the loss of the Kugonaut Hotel, because the brick that was the Kugonaut is now our garage. And Mr. Paget, who did the brickwork, also rescued the frieze that used to be around the top of the building. So if anybody here wants it, I've saved it. So let me introduce myself. I'm a former Weezer City Councilman, former Washington County Commissioner, former current city a Weiser Planning and Zoning Chairman, currently serving on the Weiser Design Review Committee, 38 years on both the Weiser and Washington County Historic Preservation Commission, former board member and chairman of the Idaho State Historical Society, current board member of the Idaho Humanities Council, and a founding member of the Weiser Architectural Preservation Committee, which is probably it's the only, other than Idaho Preservation, or Preservation Idaho, which is a statewide nonprofit preservation organization. We're the only other one of its kind in the state for our community. And I'm also retired from the healthcare administration career. I brought copies. I didn't know how long I'd have to talk and really what your interest might be, so I kind of just brought you guys pass these around. I'll try to go through them quickly. I don't want to hold your meeting up too much, but you know, when we talk about certified local government and preservation, I think that a lot of things, different things come to people's mind. And I thought it would be useful if we just took a quick second to kind of give a timeline of what historic preservation is. It really has its roots in museums, and as we start at the top there, you know, the first museum in America was 1773 in Charleston, South Carolina. The Louvre didn't even open for 20 years after that. And as you work your way down, probably the most important thing that informs your certified local government is the Antiquities Act of 1906. And for any of you that might be a history buff, you'll remember Teddy Roosevelt and the sorts of things that were going on in some of our national parks, in particular Grand Canyon. There was concern there about archaeological artifacts being damaged or lost or stolen, and degradation of those Antiquities Act. And that's kind of the basis of where we are today with preservation. In 1949, the National Trust for Historic Preservation was chartered by Congress. In 1966, the National Historic Preservation Act. So this might ring a few bells for you. It establishes the National Register of Historic Places. That, more than anything today, is sort of an honorarium. There was for many years grants and things associated with being listed on the National Register. Those went away under Reagan. The State Historic Preservation Offices, so we call it SHPO, S-H-P-O. And just for your information, in Idaho, the SHPO office is actually contained within the Idaho State Historical Society. It's a division of the society. However, their funding is totally federal. So some states, they have an independent SHPO office. In Idaho, it's contained within the Idaho State Historical Society. Then there's an advisory council on historic preservation and the Section 106 review process. That's a biggie. And we'll talk just briefly about that. So 1972, that nonprofit Preservation Idaho was founded. 1975, Idaho passes the Local Land Use Planning Act, and I'm sure you guys are kind of a big, and your overall statement about what your goals and objectives are. We have something similar for historic preservation, and within that comprehensive plan, there is a section on cultural and historic resources, so it ties into what we're talking about today. So the Certified Local Government Program was initiated in 1980 here in Idaho. In 1983, we actually in Weiser got our Weiser Architectural Preservation Committee established. It was a committee of our museum up there, our county museum. And we had a fire in downtown Weiser, and several of us that were on the board at the time said, you know, we need to do something to protect our environment down there, and so this committee was established, and we eventually broke off and became our own nonprofit. So in 1985, Kootenai County and Pocatello become Idaho's first certified local governments. Boise soon follows. 1987, 11 more CLGs were established, including Cambridge, Washington County, and the city of Weiser. In 1990, the state centennial celebration commemorated that event through the creation of the Idaho Heritage Trust. That's a 501c3, but that's also a granting organization, and that's the folks that, when we first got our red, white, and blue license plates, they were called centennial plates, and the legislature endowed the Heritage Trust with a percentage of every registration license plate sale. So that's where their funding comes from. And then finally, in 2016, the city of Payette becomes a certified local government. A little late to the game, but you know, you're in, so that's good. In 2024, the SHPO office dispersed $99,000 in statewide grants. You got $6,000 for hosting that preservation training camp earlier this year. And in 2025, they got an extra $1,000 that's being split among applicants. So Weezer again applied for a grant and received $8,000 to do a National Register nomination. So along that line, if you flip the page, we have just kind of wrapped up. We're probably in the next month, our city council will approve our preservation plan, historic preservation plan. This is a page out of that. It's not officially been adopted yet, but we had to list kind of the stuff that we as a CLG have done in our own community. So this gives you an idea of projects. A couple of things, and these all involve money. I would say that we probably have, throughout these different projects, have received somewhere in the neighborhood of $75,000 to $100,000 in grants to do National Register nominations and the like. But that grant money kind of turns itself over any number of times. So actually back in 2000, downtown Weezer did a downtown revitalization project, and they were able to capture $200,000 in ICE-T grant, which is a Surface Transportation Act grant. So we got $200,000 in new sidewalks and that kind of thing. But the city also parlayed that by using that grant as a match for some of their other funding. So just an example of how you can use preservation-related grants to bring other money into your community. And then also not on here in 2007, the Idaho Heritage Trust, that state organization, actually moved their offices to Weezer. And we were happy to put them in our depot because they wrote a grant for $500,000 to do the restoration on that. So I would say, easily we brought well over $1 million in income for different projects that we've done. So that's just kind of an example of that. On to the next page is just the cover page of the Idaho Certified Local Government Program. Your CLG folks, your commission should all have that handbook, or at least have access to it. I just want to make sure you guys know that it's there. If you're kind of like Weezer and a lot of communities, you guys know that you have a Planning and Zoning Commission, but your Historic Preservation Commission sometimes flies under the radar. And we'll talk a little more about that. So the next page is just the cover page of 5 pages worth of Idaho CLGs. There are 40 certified local governments in Idaho. Payette is one of those 40, and Washington County has 3. The next page is ICRIS, which is the Idaho Cultural Resource Information System. That's something that your CLG will be working with, basically, and they've just established that and got it operational. It still has a few glitches, kind of like your minutes, that need to be worked out, but they have an online source that's statewide, and basically anytime that there's been a project that's involved either historic resources directly or indirectly, there's going to be a bleep. There's an interactive map on there you can go onto, and you can look at anything and everything that's kind of happened in your community. Next page, Canyon County Idaho Historic Preservation Plan. I just took a copy of theirs. They've had one now for 8 years or so, or 7 years, I guess. As I said, Weezer is just finishing up ours. We got our counties passed a couple of years ago. If you guys have not done one, you'll want to be doing one, because SHPO is looking more favorably on CLGs that have one, as opposed to those that do not. And the reason for that is much the same as it is for your comp plan. they want to make sure that those hard-earned dollars are being invested in projects that have been well thought out, that have been prioritized in advance, so that it's not sort of helter-skelter, you know, oh, we got to go save it this time, and I will tell you, I've been guilty of that. The group has been guilty of that. So it's helped us align our thinking and prioritize. So one of the things in the plan is that it does prioritize what you need to do. And it also spells out what your resources are, how many historic properties you've got, how many properties are eligible. There are way more eligible properties probably for National Register listing than those that are on the register. And enough of that for right now. So, am I doing okay, or are you guys bored out of your mind yet? Okay. So, you know, the question is, what is historic preservation? And you know, as I said, I start off with the museums, because the museums do kind of what we do in a larger sense. Museums became repositories for things, documents, and things that are part of our culture and our identity and all that kind of thing. Historic preservation is basically the same thing for all the stuff that won't go in a museum. They're too big. They're places, they're physical edifices, and what makes them important, what makes them National Register eligible are basically two things. Either something important happened there, or there's something that's important or significant about the building itself. Most times that's the architecture. And I kind of jokingly say, you know, it could be an outhouse if George Washington plotted a battle while in there. But it goes, we find that historic preservation, people think I've got a historic home, but there's not a piece of original fabric on the outside of it. You know, it's the vinyl windows, vinyl siding, additions and all that kind of thing. In order to be eligible and continue to remain on the National Register, you have to have at least 75% of that exterior fabric intact. Now, it doesn't have to be original, it just has to, if you are going to replace it, it's got to be replaced in like kind. And one of the things that I find about people that think they've got a historic home is that degradation of that historic resource happens over time. This owner comes in and he puts in plastic windows and moves on. The next owner comes in and puts in a plastic door and moves on, and then the next owner. And that's why it's so important. Things are only original once. I'm an old car hobbyist. I like original things, and people like to fix up their Chevys and make them something that they're different. That there's a place for that, but it's the same sort of thing if you've got an original car versus original property. And it doesn't have to be onerous. And the nice thing about that is that it is an economic generator for your community. One of the things that they talked about, and based on my years of public service, I will tell you the Department of Commerce and all kinds of agencies talk about what brings people, what brings investment into your community. And there are any number of things, but historic preservation is one of those tools in your toolkit, and it shouldn't be overlooked. Cultural we were in Italy a few years ago, and Italy's primary economic engine, either first or second place, is tourism, historic tourism. Now, we aren't Italy. We don't have that to offer, but we have people come to our community. I'm sure you have people come to your community for the architecture. And, I have lamented the fact, I can remember, well, I am still slightly jealous of Payette, if I'm truthful about it. I keep looking at your downtown, thinking, well, a nice broad street. We still have a lot of wonderful old buildings there. We've lost a lot of our downtown buildings. And it just seems like, so what's happening? I remember when you guys got your new street lamps and years ago, and I thought, well, they're going to take off and we're going to be left in the dust. And it just hasn't quite happened that way. So anyway, so that's what historic preservation is. So a historic preservation commission is much like your planning and zoning commission. It's established by ordinance. It's going to make a copy of your ordinance, but a lot of councils have no idea that there actually is an ordinance there that spells out what the duties are, who serves, and as such, you're subject to the open meeting law and all of the other state guidelines. However, beyond that, your commission is also subject to the rules outlined in the handbook, the copy of which the cover I laid out for you. So inactive or non-compliant CLGs can and will be encouraged to shape up or give up their status. And we just, every 4 years, they do a survey. The state will come out and, as well, they won't come out, they send a survey. It's 16 pages of questions. Are you doing this? Are you doing that? That sort of thing. So you need somebody that's going to be on top of that. Some communities fund the preservation office and staff. Do you guys fund your? You probably don't have staff. You know, Boise has an office, Nampa probably has an office. I mean, it's money, and most of us in small towns don't. So it ends up falling on people who are volunteers to kind of reach in their pocket. Anyway, and let me see. So the HPC should play an active role in community planning and economic development opportunities. The CLG and other grants usually require a 50-50 match. And so if you aren't providing funding, a lot of times that's going to become a problem in getting a grant. Some of those grants will allow you to match with in-kind hours, in-kind services, that helps. But sometimes they're just plain old hard dollars. And so maybe considering to put a few dollars in your budget for this will help bring those extra dollars, match dollars, into your community. HPC should actively engage with their Chamber of Commerce's. Cultural tourism, as I said, is just one of those things. How many of you heard of the Main Street program? Yeah, so now the Main Street program actually was conceived by the National Trust for Historic Preservation back in the 1970s. In the 1970s is when urban renewal came along and started scraping every important building in downtowns because they thought that was the cost of blight. And lo and behold, you know, when those buildings were gone, they still had the same problems. And I won't go into that other than to say that the National Trust was concerned about the loss of those buildings, and so they said we have to figure out a way to incentivize people, and they knew that there was an economic factor and a cultural factor there, and so they developed the Main Street program specifically to counter the downtown decay. It's now evolved into the Main Street America program, which is a little bit different. The National Trust has spun it off, but basically, so if you know what the Main Street program is, then you know what they can do for a community, and they should be working hand in hand with your Historic Preservation Commission. Last, a couple of things. There's no longer grants for restoration work, but there are tax credits from the Secretary of the Interior for commercial projects, which are quite, you know, meaningful. A lot of the work that's been done in downtown Boise and Nampa, Caldwell, have been underwritten by those tax credits. So keep those in mind. And then a couple of last things about what National Register status can and do. You know, I'm often asked, gee, my house is on the National Register. What can I do? It's in early days, as I said, there were grants available, but there aren't anymore. But when there were grants, there were restrictions or covenants. They wanted to make sure if you're using federal dollars to do work on your house that the public knew about it. Those grants are gone now, so it's primarily just an honorarium. Where the restrictions, if you want to call them that, I call it recommendations, come into play is at the local government level. So if you have a National Register district, historic district, it doesn't even have to be National Register. And that's kind of a misnomer. You guys as a city, if you wanted to create a district, you could call anything built before a certain period of time, we're going to call that in this geographic area a historic district. But a lot of communities do a National Register historic district. It gives it a little bit more clout. A National Register district also makes, for example, in your downtown, monies available for doing restoration work through those tax credits. You can demolish a property that's on the National Register. You can do whatever you want to it, just like it was not on the National Register. But if it's on the register and that you do enough alteration to it, it will become ineligible and you risk it coming off the National Register. So just know that if and when the time comes that you want to do a district, you guys get to make the rules. And there is one other thing. I'm sure you use the Uniform Building Code standard that's used across the country. There is a historic preservation building code that you can also adopt, which is to do renovations to their home that don't have to be brought up to current building standards. So it's sort of another benefit that you could employ. So I've talked long enough, I guess. Is there anything that?
Yes, Mr. Evans, I do have a question. So in your knowledge, would having a historic district or utilizing this historic building code, is it financially beneficial to the citizens that own the homes? Do they see improved values, or is it kind of a moot point?
Well, I think statistics show that yes, it improves property values. And the reason for that, as much as anything, is that people don't want to invest. Well, let me give another kind of reference. We've dealt with that in Weiser too, about when we have businesses come in that want to come in on a shoestring. And most businesses want to do business where they know that their investment is going to be protected. They don't want to invest in a community a big bunch of dollars and then have something next door come in that really detracts from what they're doing. Same thing is true in a National Register district. People move into National Register districts because they know that their neighbor can't put on that vinyl siding or rip this down or whatever. So those guidelines do result typically in higher property values, if that makes sense.
I have a question. So approximately 7 years ago, I was employed by the Payette Senior Center. I applied to Main Street America for a grant, and they informed me they did not give grants out to communities less than 10,000 population. Is that still true?
Honestly, I've not kept up with it since they were spun off of the Main Street program and became Main Street America. I know that the state, in order to even be eligible in the state, the state has to have an office, and that office is included, I think, in the Department of Commerce. It's staffed by one person, so the state's not pushing it. But in answer to your question, I can't answer that. I would find that odd, to be honest with you, because the Main Street program was really conceived, or at least embodied, in lots of small rural communities. I think Ottawa has probably more than any other state, and they're just lots of little towns.
That's why I got the idea, but what I was trying to do, that building was built in 1895. It needs an elevator so that we can utilize the third floor.
Yeah, we've got one of those in town too that needs an elevator.
That's why I was trying to get a grant.
That's a hard one. I talk about grants, but let me tell you, I mean, there are lots of people applying for grants, so there's, and now probably more than ever. But, I'm sorry I couldn't answer that.
Thank you.
Sorry, I just had a comment. The fire department, and I don't remember which year, was awarded the Idaho Heritage Award for the work that they had done at the museum.
Right.
So people probably don't remember that, but it was a big thing when we got it.
Well, the Idaho State Historical Society has a community enhancement grant program. They have any number of others, and I don't know how active your museum is in applying for those grants. But I know that our preservation commissions are pretty engaged in, if there's a grant out there, that they can spend one way or another. Now, we don't have staff persons writing those grants, and I would be happy to share whatever experience we have in writing a successful grant. And as I say, those CLG grants, there's $100,000. When in that list of what we've done through the last 20 years or so, there's a lot that we applied for that we didn't get that's not on that list. That's just a list of what we actually got. And there are other sources of funding that we've applied to as well. So, yeah, anyway.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, good luck. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, next order of business, task order number 2, on-site mixed chemical disinfection, Keller and Associates.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. Good to be with you tonight. Justin Walker with Keller Associates. I'm also here with one of my co-workers, Daniel Waterman here. I think I forgot to introduce him the last couple of times I'm here. Let me just tell you a little story first and then be happy to respond to any questions. And not a story, but maybe something that you already know. But the city of Payette has actually a unique system that disinfects your wastewater after it goes through the treatment process. It's kind of almost one of a kind, and I don't, not a great way. And that is because you have an old chlorine gas system, and those present a little more safety risks, hazards to both your operators and the surrounding public. And so your personnel have identified that as something that they've wanted to upgrade for a while, and have been able to prioritize it now and budget it now. So that's what this project is. It's the project will look at replacing that old chlorine gas system with a safer and more reliable system. And there's a couple different alternatives that will be evaluated as part of the preliminary engineering report. That said, in Idaho statute, there are 2 phases of a project development, especially a sewer, a wastewater, and a water system improvement that require involvement of a professional licensed engineer. One is the preliminary engineering report, and that document, there's about 4 pages of statute that outlines what has to be in a preliminary engineering report. But in short, it outlines the deficiencies of a system or a part of the system. The water or wastewater system. It identifies the alternatives that would be considered or should be considered to correct that deficiency. Outlines the environmental impacts of those proposed improvements. It evaluates the planning and design criteria of those components, and evaluates a handful of other things that relate to odors and property acquisition, things like that. And so, again, that one step is the preliminary engineering report in the project development. Oftentimes accompanies a 30% or corresponds to about a 30 to 40% design. Then the next step that requires support or involvement of a professional licensed engineer is the actual plans and specifications, which is used to go out and procure a contractor's services to build those improvements. And I guess there's a third, and it's during construction, there's some level of involvement. So in front of you today is a task order to prepare the preliminary engineering report for the proposed improvements to disinfection elements at the wastewater treatment plant. And that meets those Idaho statute requirements. And so, maybe a longer story than you wanted, but in short, that's what you have in front of you today.
Very informative.
I hope it's helpful. Maybe it's you're like, I didn't really care to know that, but oh yeah, good. There you go. So that's what you have in front of me. I'd be happy to respond to questions. And I think Kevin probably knows more about his wastewater treatment plant than me, but.
So is it something we're building at the plant? Is that what you're telling me?
That's the intent, so this is part of the design process. It's the first step in the design process. Again, it's called the preliminary engineering report, and really it evaluates all the alternatives that could be used to address or correct the deficiency. In this case, it's the disinfection piece of it, and then establishes the recommended improvement and outlines a cost estimate and a plan of attack for doing it. Yeah.
My curiosity is, I happen to be an engineering background, but
Yeah.
this isn't the first time this has been done, so I'm assuming there's a lot of places you can go pull similar stuff that's been done like this and not have to recreate the wheel.
Yeah, that's true. There are pretty recognized pieces of equipment and technologies, Ray, for disinfection, ultraviolet, on-site chlorination, which are some of the things that the city has entertained and are used in other communities. But yeah.
But ultraviolet still being looked at because they haven't had real success with ultraviolet.
Oh, actually, it's used very regularly.
We've had it for years. They pulled it out.
Yeah, it's used in a lot of communities. It has better success with different qualities of wastewater, treated wastewater. But no, it's used actually quite regularly, even today in certain applications. So it can be certain types of technology might, but in short, that will be used and then personalized to your treatment facility, both flow and characteristic of flow at the wastewater plant.
I have one, I think, real basic question.
Sure.
This is just a pretty big number, so can you give me an idea of what you're going to be spending most of your time on?
Yeah, you bet. So as I said, part of the process, there's about 4 pages in statute that outlines all the parts and pieces, and I'd be happy to send those to you, Ray, so you have, a more thorough explanation. Sorry, Jim, Ray, sorry, my bad. I looked right at you and read your name, but in short, much of the time will be spent evaluating these technologies, the alternative technologies that can be used. There's a process that we will be required to establish all the design criteria, that's flows and characteristic of your wastewater, and then evaluating the best way of implementing the project. So you have existing facilities and buildings, and so how will it fit into those? There'll be a set of drawings that will be developed. There'll be a full electrical evaluation will be completed, and then also a SCADA, a controls and integration element that allows this new equipment to speak with all the other equipment on the plant site. Cost estimates will be developed, and then all the criteria outlined in the state statute.
Okay, thank you.
Good question.
Okay, so I know there's, and I'm sorry, but I can't remember what it is, but once our population reaches 10,000, there's something we need to be doing with runoff, wastewater.
No, no.
That's not wastewater.
Probably stormwater.
Okay, so this process won't have any ties to that.
Okay.
See, that's why I was writing it down, so I didn't look like an idiot.
I think it's good to clarify. It's good to clarify these things because there's always a different aspect that could possibly tie into it. One of the big reasons that wastewater wants to look at this is a safety concern. It's more of a safety concern than anything at this point. And Kevin can talk about that if you want him to. Go ahead, Kevin. Tell me how you're maintaining the system.
That system right now is 30, 40 years old. Everything's getting brittle. It's getting harder to find parts for it. We're allowed to have 2,500 pounds of gas on site. I don't have anyone go in there except for me because it's getting old enough that it's become a big concern.
So, another question, and I'm a little confused. This is going completely away from the ammonia then, because at one point you were talking about making it on site.
That's still an option. It's either generating our own chlorine, which would be making our own chlorine. So it'd be very minimal, 12%. Or go into a UV system like some of the other cities do. I think Caesar's doing the MIOC system where they're making their own. Fruitland uses UV, so we'll have a chance to look at all of that, see which is the best. We're not building a whole new building, we're using what's there, just putting a new system in.
And so on-site generation, the difference between on-site chlorine generation is, and chlorine gas, of course, this comes in these cylinders that are high pressure, and chlorine gas inherently is very lethal. But the on-site generation produces, it's a slightly more concentrated than Clorox, I guess, and other household products, 12.5%. But it's a liquid, it comes in bulk, it can come in bulk or small containers, and really quite innocuous in natural environments. So that's the difference when we talk about on-site chlorine, liquid chlorine, and then gaseous chlorine.
This is a work order task.
So this is a task order for Keller to do the work at that amount to provide what he just explained.
Okay. So Mr. Mayor, I move we approve task order number 2, on-site mixed chemical disinfection for Keller Associates in the amount of $76,800.
I have a first and a second to approve task order number 2 for on-site mixed chemical disinfection in the amount of $76,800 for the sewer department. Any further discussion? Clerk, please call the roll.
Steinecker?
Yes.
Wickersham?
Yes.
Black?
Yes.
Franklin?
Yes.
Patrick?
Yes.
Motion is carried. Thank you, sir. Next order of business is Business Associate Agreement and Client Service Agreement with AccuSur Northwest Partners Insurance Service, LLC. So this is coming back to council because, even though you guys voted to...
Idaho law.
Idaho law?
Yeah,
Change?
Changed the venue or choice of law. And it was changed in one that I saw.
That's why.
He's not here.
Oh, change of law provision, or I mean, the choice of law provision, we wanted it changed to Idaho instead of being Minnesota, and the venue to be in Payette County instead of,
You got that
Minneapolis.
I didn't think they were willing to do that, you got that changed.
It's in there, it's right, I would think that they would probably submit to that, I think that's a reasonable request.
So you're saying it's changed, right?
They haven't
What's in the
signed it,
packet?
what's in the packet shows what I think you guys need to authorize it to send to them for review, but I could be incorrect on that. What the process is.
Yes.
This was for our broker, correct? Or, no. Does it not state in here what percentage they get for brokerage fees?
I'd have to.
I don't think it does because it doesn't come out of us, it comes out of the insurance company.
Okay.
So that's what they negotiate with the insurance companies, not with us directly.
So we've changed it, and we have to send it to them to see if they'll sign it? Is that?
Yeah, and give the authorization to the mayor to sign it and present it to them. Where we're at. And I just want you to know you're going with a good company because, they sponsor the Pittsburgh Steelers Stadium. So I'm sure they're a reputable business.
We like that team, so.
That's right, that's right.
Your ancient quarterback.
Okay, we're not gonna talk about week 2, let's focus on week 1 and, we'll see what happens in week 3.
Mr. Mayor? Yes. I move we approve associate agreement and client services agreement with AccuSur Northwest Partners Insurance Services and authorize their signature.
I second.
First and a second to approve the business associate agreement and client service agreement with AccuSur Northwest Partners Insurance Service LLC and authorize my signature. Any further discussion? Clerk, please call the roll.
Steinecker?
Yes.
Wickersham?
Yes.
Black?
Yes.
Franklin?
Yes.
Patrick?
Yes.
Motion carries. All right, next one I will entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I I move we introduce ordinance number 1570 by title only.
Second.
First and second to introduce ordinance 1570 by title only. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Ordinance 1570, an ordinance of the City of Payette, Idaho, in accordance with Idaho Code 50-329, 50-329 Alpha, 50-330, and 50-344, granting Hardin Sanitation, Inc. a 10-year franchise with an additional 5-year renewal term to operate within the corporate limits of the City of Payette, Idaho garbage collection systems and facilities for supplying garbage collection service to the city. The inhabitants thereof and others, providing for definitions, providing for mandatory solid waste collection, establishing the rights and obligations of the franchisee and the City of Payette, establishing the methods of collection of the solid waste, providing for penalties, providing for a repealer clause, providing for severability, and providing an effective date. First reading.
Our mayor looked this over? I mean, has our,
Yeah. I've looked it over a couple of times.
Bobby?
Well, just questions. On page 66, it says, "The city council also hereby adopts the findings as stated by Mayor Lopez on June 16th. Is that just the minutes? Page 66?
I think the findings is that it's necessary to go into a franchise. I think that's what it's saying right there.
Is the findings our minutes?
Yeah, I think the reason that we needed to amend it, but let me see just
Okay.
what you're talking about. Are you?
Page 66 of the agreement, Bobby?
Of the ordinance.
no, the ordinance.
Second whereas, I'm assuming that's something that was in the original ordinance and was just updated to the current mayor.
Let me look that one up real quick, but I'm sure those are the statutory findings that you have to make in order to enter into a franchise agreement. That it's necessary to have a solid waste and that you're gonna go with this company, and then the statutes usually are gonna have things that.
My only comment is it would have been possibly a little better if it was actually in the document instead of referring to something nobody had access to. Somewhere down the road, they're gonna have to go look that up, so.
Mr. Mayor? Usually findings and facts we approve, once they do something, we approve the findings and facts. So if we've approved the city council minutes and that's what they're saying, then that's good.
I just assume it
Well, I
was
think if you
adjusted
read the
to.
next sentence, Bobby, it talks
Okay.
about section 5344, and then it talks about upon the mayor finding
Yeah.
that this franchise agreement is for the public safety, the necessary protection of public health, welfare, and property. I think those are the findings that it's talking about the mayor making.
Yeah, it's-
Those
it's-
statutory findings.
Yeah,
In the
5344
June 16th meeting
subsection 3. The finding is that it's necessary for the protection of public health,
Right.
welfare, and property, and the provisions of chapter 28, title 67 Idaho Code shall not apply to solid waste collection as provided herein. So it's just saying that it's necessary, the public health needs it, and it's authorizing him to go in and enter into this franchise. That's a recital is what we call those, and so it's just reciting what has to be found under Idaho code.
Okay.
Sorry, I had to look it up and read it as we were going, I apologize for that.
And then page 68, that's 2019, at the very, very last sentence. I would assume that it's October 1st, 2025, not 2019.
Yes, it probably should be on that, that's probably the old one, and I just didn't catch
Okay.
that one, I apologize for that.
I just had a question, so I really read it. On page 69, section 4, about middle way down, it says exempt from the payment of a mandatory weekly minimum charge. We don't do weekly, we do monthly charges.
Yeah, I don't know if that's talking about either a prior agreement or something that was in the code, because it doesn't reference it.
Okay.
But it doesn't affect anything, because it's saying we're not gonna do it this way, and then the agreement tells you how you're gonna do it.
Okay.
So that doesn't, for me, I mean, you could cut it out, but I didn't know if it was referring to maybe a past agreement or something like that. Maybe that's how you used to do it, and you're not doing it that way anymore.
I think, Bobby, the findings that they're talking about when they reference June 16th is increasing hard and sanitation fees. But there
For
was
the
no
public
vote
hearing
taken.
we had.
You're talking about in the minutes?
Okay.
I'm looking at the minutes for June 16th. But there was no vote taken on that.
But technically, the vote today would be adopting that finding. You're saying that the mayor found this, when you voted in, that recital would become part of the record.
And then one last question on page 70.
Keep firing,
I
Bob.
know. It says, it's about third sentence down, it says the standard rate shall be established by resolution. Well, we don't have a resolution in our packet.
Which
Oh,
one?
E, sorry,
What page?
70.
7, okay.
Consider.
You say E?
Because when we had this in June, we had the agreement and we had a resolution.
Yeah. I think what you're going to do is you're going to adopt this agreement, and then you're gonna have a resolution that follows where you set those fees, and I believe those fees are set in the exhibit to this. I didn't end up looking through those, but there's an exhibit that has the different fees on it.
And so we will most likely adopt that resolution on the October 6th meeting.
Because the resolution will set the fee, this sets kind of the rules of the game, the contractual obligations between the parties, and then the resolution's gonna adopt that fee, so it's gonna be a two-step.
Did we come up with anything we need to change?
The date,
2025 on that. The term of it.
So you're saying that there's no fee selection today?
Yeah, it's fees in the agreement, franchise agreement. And then it'll be solidified through resolution.
Yeah. I think the code, if I recall, and I looked at this a while ago, but the code, when we first looked at it, requires the fee schedules to be by resolution.
That makes sense.
Yep. So I think the change, you could, if that's the only change, I think we could vote in favor or against how you guys want to vote, but subject to that change on page 68, it would be section 2, grant of franchise, and then it would just be changing beginning October 1st, 2025, since that's when it will be amended and become effective. Unless there's a body, unless I'm sorry, but I need to cut it off.
no,
Okay.
I got my questions answered, thank you.
You're welcome, I'm trying.
Mr. Mayor, I move we suspend the rules and pass ordinance 1570 on first reading.
I second that.
First and second to suspend the rules and pass ordinance 1570 on its first reading. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion
That was
carries.
the correction?
With the correction.
With the correct, oh yeah, I assumed with the correction.
Okay.
You want
I'm-
to state it,
I'm
just go
just
ahead and have
assuming.
it voted on again real quick with that in there.
Okay, well, I mean, the motion carries, but
Let's go ahead.
amend the motion. Strike the motion.
Strike the motion and just put it in new with that change. I think everybody knew that I was talking about that, but if you want to, you can make a quick vote.
Okay, so, Mr. Mayor, I move we suspend the rules and pass ordinance number 1570 on the first read as long as the date on page 68 is changed to October 1st, 2025.
I second.
First and second to suspend the rules and pass ordinance 1570 on its first reading with the change of page 68, section 2, from the 2019 date to the October 1st, 2025. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Mr. Mayor, I move ordinance 1570 be passed.
Second.
First and second that ordinance 1570 do pass. Any further discussion? Clerk, please call the roll.
Wickersham?
Yes.
Black?
Yes.
Franklin?
Yes.
Patrick?
Yes.
Steinecker? Yes.
Motion carries. All right, hardened franchise agreement. think you're one short. I already gave it to him. Oh.
It just has the keys on that.
The future of it.
So have our city attorney look this one over?
Yeah,
Any comments?
Which one?
the agreement.
Oh, yeah, I've looked that over previously, I didn't have.
We sent our revisions
Yeah.
before the packet. so
Unless
they're all-
there's more changes that you guys wanna discuss, I didn't review it.
Mayor.
Fine.
So I just have a question that, should we not change the wording in the agreement from handicapped to disabled because of the way they define it now?
Is there a are you mean from social norms, is that what we're talking about?
I was just reading the ADA National Network, and it just says the use of language that emphasizes the need for accessibility rather than the presence of a disability. Note that handicapped is an outdated and unacceptable term to use when referring to individuals or accessible environments.
And you're talking about
If-
page 3 handicapped residential units, is that what you're talking about?
There's not very many in there, but there's a few that it says handicapped.
So Bobby, I have a question. If you go to DMV and get a handicap license, do they still call it a handicap license? I thought they did.
Disabled.
Disabled, I
If it's
believe.
disabled
I
person.
believe.
Because there's a lot of disabled.
I'll just tell you, like, as a legal matter,
Mhm.
I wouldn't bat an eye at whether you call it handicap. I
Okay.
mean, but it's a stylistic thing, if you wanna change that.
No, I'm
easy
just
enough to change,
asking.
because
I'd rather
there
have
is-
it done correctly.
I don't wanna, I don't know what the politics are, some people consider handicap to be the right term and disabled to be woke, and I don't try to get involved in
Okay.